Okay, here we go. We're on the outskirts of the critical gauntlet, the key to the season, to evaluating many key pieces to this regime, the regime itself. We got the Pats coming up, and, I fell into it a little bit, and it was foolish. But the first rule of division games is no division game is easy. You got to always be on guard. And this game, I'm hearing from some people say that Tehran's questionable. And they're saying that maybe he's not playing this week because you got the short week to Green Bay at Thanksgiving. And then that could change things. I mean, if he plays both games is one thing. But the Patriots aren't a good team, but they're a division opponent, and you never know. I mean, how many times did we beat the Patriots when they were hot to trot and we were garbage? So we really should win this game. We must win this game. And I will include this as like an addendum to the gauntlet that's coming. But clearly the gauntlet starts on Green Bay. So I put together, I'll do the matchups. I'm going to do the live tomorrow at 10 p.m. Come check me out there. Also on my channel this week, we're doing an AFC shakedown with all the guys from each team talking about that. So that'll be Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So come check me out there. And so I'll do the actual matchup for the Patriots tomorrow. But what I want to do here, I spent a lot of time. I'm not saying it's all the answers, but I looked at how defenses played us, how we responded, the teams themselves, how they performed, the defenses that is, that we faced, and then the ones we're going to face to help try to create a framework for an evaluation. Again, a lot of this stuff, I'm going to have my hypothesis, but you're going to have to come up with your own conclusion. But I think it's going to give you some really good information. I spent a lot of time. I said I wasn't going to do the graphics, but I had no choice because it would just been a mishmash without it. So I'm going to get the graphics, give you all this information, and I think something is very interesting and very critical. Something I've talked about. It got a little vague, clearly without Tua, but I think we're starting to see something, so I'm going to get into that. So we're going to see Tua, McDaniel, how they conceived things and produced, and how the defenses played us. And I think it's a whole heap of stuff to get some interesting info. Now, here's a little thing by Gustav Le Bon. I love studying and all that. This is not to anybody out there. It is definitely for you to me. And it's definitely that you should always apply to everyone and everything, including yourself. It's a very powerful statement. Gustav Le Bon, what a name, man. That guy should have been a rock star. The masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error. If error seduces them, whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always the victim. And he's talking about mass psychosis, but we kind of deceive ourselves. We don't mean to always. People who give us information, sometimes they mean to deceive us, sometimes they don't. But if we follow our emotions, as we do anything in life, evaluating ourselves, evaluating our football team, evaluating people who give us information, then you're going to get off track. But it's a tendency of people to want to hear what they want to hear. So always, at least with my channel, it's okay. I don't mind you questioning me. I don't mind, and I prefer it, to call me out on stuff. I will not always be perfect. That's 100%. I will do my best. I will never try to hustle you, but I'm not always right. And so we always have to keep this in our mind because Dolphin fans, the Miami Dolphins team is a $1 billion industry. They've got a huge media department, and they're going to try to drive some narratives. And so we have to be clear in this final. If everything goes well, we win 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 7. We go to the playoffs, win a couple of rounds. It's clear. If we totally crap out and we win 1 or 2 games, it's clear. It's this middle ground. It is going to be very hard. And it's very important for us to be on point with that. Savvy, like, subscribe, the comments, the views, all that stuff keeps me in the biz. Please help me out with that. So let's get into, away from my tendency to talk about all the stuff here. Let's get into my graphic. Okay, so I got all the games that Tua played in week 1 through week 11, obviously missing week 3 through 7. And I put pressures, PRES, blitzed percentage, how much we were blitzed, pass rush mitigation, pulling together play actions and screens. I'll get into that if you don't understand. Tua's completion percentage, his yards, TD to int ratio, average depths of target, and then yards per completion. And so there is, I know a lot of you guys heard me speak about this, but I'm going to rehash it just to clarify it and for people who haven't heard. So if a team's bringing blitzes, right, and they bring 20% blitzing, they want to at least get 20% pressure or more. If they get less than that, then they're not being efficient. And so anytime you match up the blitzes with the pressure, you kind of get an idea who's winning in that battle, depending on the ratio between blitz and pressure. So you're going to see that. It's going to be an important piece. Pass rush mitigation. When you call screens, it puts bodies there. It's used to offset pass rush. Screens, when you blitz and you're getting a hot blitz, you call that screen and you take advantage of that. That's what these are primarily designed for. And so the OC is going to call a certain amount based on what he sees or believes his protection is, and then as the game goes, he's going to adjust, either up it or lower it. Completion percentage, we got that in. Now, average depth of target and yards per catch. So average depth of target is all the passes. Where was the quarterback looking? And that's kind of like the general idea, the theme of what the OC is trying to get as far as depth. But then ultimately, what you finally catch is what it actually amounts to. So if you have very high depth, average depth of target, but then your yards per catch is lower, that means he was looking deep and he had to check down. And you can get a flavor for that. Conversely, if your average depth of target is low and the yards per catch is very high, he's looking low and he sees something big and he opens it up and the receivers break open the secondary. Now, if they're both high, then you're doing what you want to do. Okay, so that's the whole thing. Now, I've got boxes, the wins green, losses red, and then there are anomalies. Okay, so purple is good stuff, orange is bad stuff, and blue is just, I put that on the pass rush mitigation to show anomalies. Okay, so week 1 against the Jags, let's think about who the Jags are. Not a good team. Pass defense, 31st in the league right now. Pass rush 31st, and rush defense, run defense 26th. Not hot to trot. But they've got Allen, who can rush like a monster, and they got really 2 awesome linebackers, Lloyd and Okoloun. Now, that creates something. I can't dig into it too much, but you got to keep that as a context. It was week 1 for both teams. Miami might not have been in their groove, but you could see they blitzed 16% and got 18% pressure. All right. So basically, we were blitzed 16% of the time and 2% more pressure. Okay. So they got a little bit of an edge as far as their optimizing their blitz ratio. Now, our pass rush mitigation was 63%, which is extraordinarily high. It's mind-blowingly high. And when you call screens, it's quick stuff, and it can be good, but most of the time, it's short completions. You get the pass out really quick, but when you call play actions, you're pulling guys out of routes, and it makes it harder to complete these plays. You get more time, and you can make things happen, but with less guys in coverage, with less guys in routes, it makes it a little bit more difficult, especially if you're bringing that much pass rush mitigation and they're blitzing that little. It means you're throwing 2 and 3 guys against maybe 6, 7 in secondary. So it's not easy. So Tua had 62%, which was his lowest completion percentage on the year. He had 338 yards, which was the most yards he had on the year. Only 1 TD, 1 int, and you know it was close, and we almost lost. But you can see the average depth of target was 6.4. So it was a little bit lower than maybe what we want. But we were able to break it open with some big plays for 10 yards per catch. But clearly, 63% kind of limited some of the stuff. And you can see the completion percentage is lower because there's just not as many guys out in routes. So, but Tua did a really good job. A little bit of extra pressure despite all this extra blocking help, which is not great. But then we go to week 2. We had 24% pressure with only 10% blitzing. That was highly efficient pressure through the blitzing of Buffalo. And we still brought, not terrible. A lot of teams are in the 40s. 47, but still a little high. Pass rush mitigation. But Tua had a very high completion percentage of 68%, but he only had 145 yards. He was 1 touchdown, 3 picks. We know the picks were terrible, but look at his intention. He was looking pretty deep, 7.8, and then he had to pull it back to throw underneath. And so the completion percentages, a lot of that came from these short passes, but he wasn't able to get what he wanted, and he was looking very deep, and they kind of played it very deep because they only blitzed 1 out of 10 plays. And if you look at Buffalo, they had Gregory Rousseau, who's a very potent pass rusher. But their defense, it's good. 15th pass defense, 17th pass rush, and 13 run defense, but not super duper elite. And this was a very tough game for Tua. But look at the blitz percentage compared to the pass rush mitigation. And you could say, well, that's not really that good for us. You could really point to the interceptions, and it kind of gets a little vague there. Like, oh, well, Tua just had a bad game. And maybe that's the case. We'll continue to keep looking. But when you're blitzed only 1 out of 10 and you're adding extra help, 5 out of 10, it's not usually a great formula. A lot of the teams that are getting this kind of pass rush mitigation, they're getting blitzed in the 30s and 40 range. So then Tua, he got knocked out that game. He came back week 8. And you can see right here, we had a very good game in some ways. We were pressured only 15% despite 40% blitzing. But our pass rush mitigation was almost 60% at 58%. Tua did complete it at very high 73%, although he gets higher than that. Only 34 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions. So he was kind of checked by this, by the way they attacked him. But if you'll notice, the average depth of target was the lowest of the season, or tied, 5.9, and then the actual completions was 6.2. So the pressure didn't really get there. There were some key pressures, but he had so many guys keeping the pressure off, which it helped, but there wasn't enough guys in routes, and he wasn't able to get deep, and it was all check down Charlie stuff. And it was a close game, but just not enough. And so you see the pass rush mitigation. It does help us with our protection, but there is a curtailing of Tua's ability to attack. And you'll see as the season goes, this is the key, is dropping this pass rush mitigation, get more receivers and routes. And we're there. Can we keep it? That's going to be the question. Now, AZ, they're not a good defense. 21st pass defense, 26th pass rush, and 19th rush defense. I can't say the guy's name. Dim Ukeji. He's a really good cover linebacker. Really, really good player. But that's not a great defense, okay? But that was a game where it was an offensive scoring, and they just eked out the win at the end with a clutch drive at the end. Now, week 9 versus Buffalo, you'll see that they blitzed 10%, but they got 17% pressure. Same as the week 2, a little bit less pressure this time. But see, look, we dropped the pass rush mitigation to 40%. That's our second lowest on the season. Tua had 89% completion percentage, 231, and he had 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. The average depth of target was 5.1, but it ballooned to 8.3. And so he was looking down. He found a couple of big plays and broken stuff and made some good passes, but it wasn't enough to get us over, but it was really close. I mean, we almost beat them. But you could see the pass rush mitigation, when it's pulled down to reasonable levels and the pressure isn't so high, it starts opening things up. Again, I talked about Bills, but one thing you have to remember is the Bills are this is how they play. They don't blitz a lot. And Benford was their best cornerback, and he was out. And so it wasn't exactly their best version of the defense. Everybody's got injured. I'm not making excuses, but you got to kind of count that in when you're looking through this evaluation. Now, week 10, we get the win. 34% pressure with only 13% blitzing. But remember, they've got Verse, who is just an animal. And it really alters things. You can see when there's one really good player, it kind of can get a little bit sticky for us. But they got 34% pressure with only 13% blitzing. But we kept the pass rush mitigation down. And Tua escaped a bunch of times, and he uplifted this protection. In the past, I don't know if McDaniel believed that he could create this extra time and uplift it with a dropping of the pass rush mitigation. But he saw something week 9 and week 10, and he ran with it, and he accentuated week 11. Now, Tua had 71% completion percentage, which is extraordinarily high, but not for him, so I didn't box it. But he only had 207 yards, 1-1. But the intention, again, was 9.4, and it dropped to 7.4. So Tua made those big plays, and that really was the difference because he was looking deep, and he couldn't find anything. He had to check down, and the pressure was very high. If he didn't have those escapes, we might have lost. It ended up being a lopsided victory. Defense came up big for us. But clearly, you can see the pass rush mitigation is an important thing to be in balance. Out of balance really hurts. And you can see this week against the Raiders, who, they got Crosby. Not really much in the way of their defense. Hobbs, their best defender, nickel guy, was out. They lost another starter within a few plays of the game, a very short period of time. Then they lost a third one. So this was a totally hobbled, gimped up secondary, but Crosby is a potent player. I don't think I mentioned, but Rams were 25th pass defense, 9th pass rush, and that pass rush really almost came through for them, and 18th run defense. Now, with the Raiders, their 11th pass defense, but they were down 2 corners and soon to be down, not soon, but late in the game 3. 22nd in pass rush and 15th in run defense. So I think whole, they would have been a better defense and more of a challenge, but without it, and then, obviously the offense isn't hot to trot, although Bowers is superstar status. So if you look at this week, though, 21% pressure, but 27% blitz. Very inefficient pass rush for the Raiders, who aren't that great, but still we offset it. But it was only 26% pass rush mitigation. If you look at Tua's time to throw, it was like 1.87 clean. So these guys were going in routes. The offensive line was kind of doing a little bit, and Tua's getting it out so quick, beating it, that he uplifted this stuff. Despite the blitzing, it couldn't get in quick enough. There was enough guys in routes, and he was making the right reads to dump it off. Definitely helped by not a great team and the loss of those 2 defenders, but still. And look at his completion percentage, 78%, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then he was checking down at 5.9, taking the underneath because they were playing over the top, and then he hit it for 8. And the pass rush mitigation just meant he had more options. The more options he could read from. And this has been a restriction on Tua since jump. We've always had massive pass rush mitigation. We ran our 2 tight ends a ton. But we were never able to get the guys in routes. And some of that was because Tua wasn't in the same system all the time. He clearly understands where the guys are. He's very comfortable. He's got a lot of tools, especially Jonnu. Jonnu, you could see as he is rising, it also helped out too. And so the Dolphins are getting better. McDaniel's sees something, and he's able to use this underneath stuff, and Tua is thriving more and more with the less pass rush mitigation. But when you look at these teams, even Buffalo, they're on a lower level defensively than some of these teams we're going to face. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. You do not want 63, 47, and 58. The 47 is not bad, but 10% blitzing. You want the blitzing high. You want the pass rush mitigation low, and you want to get guys in routes, and you beat the blitz by dumping it off, and that's what Tua is doing. What will happen going forward is going to be the key, but I do believe the pass rush mitigation is going to be a very, very huge sign. And it is Jonnu, it is OBJ, it is Achane, Waddle and Hill that are doing this, but it's Tua driving it and McDaniel finding some trust. Will it continue? We'll see. But if you look at these defenses, Jets, they're not a good team. We know that. But third ranked pass defense as far as yards. Eighth pass rush, 22nd run defense. So the run games would be critical. 2 games. Texans, 7th pass defense, 7th pass rush defense, and 9th run defense. Green Bay, who we'll see very soon in their house and maybe not so hot to trot weather. 14th pass, 14th rush, and 14th run defense. San Fran in our house. 6th pass defense, 16th pass rush, and then 8th run defense. Cleveland, 17th pass defense, but 3rd pass rush. And you can see how the Ravens were able to kind of make things ugly for a little while just with the pass rush. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then 24th run defense, we should be running on them. Then this week, the Pats, 18th pass defense, 23rd run pass rush defense, and then 20th run defense. We should be able to take care of them. Tehran, though, allows a lot of this stuff to happen. Tehran is able to allow the protection to go down the line of scrimmage. And so his health is going to be paramount. The offensive line is not playing stellar. It's playing good enough in a super fast game with superstar talent and a quarterback who's facilitating everything and then making plays with his legs. But we'll see how it plays out going forward. But it's clear McDaniel is trusting more and more in Jonnu. The pass rush mitigation is dropping, and Tua is beating the blitz, and he's making those big plays with his legs. So that's going to be the key. And I don't know how it'll play out against these better teams. We will see. But I think this is a critical series of bits of information. But we'll see. It could be totally wrong. We'll see how it plays out. Anyway, Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. See you soon. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.